Welcome back to another episode of the NABC Guardians of the Game podcast. I'm your host, Tim Doyle, and today we're joined on the podcast by Pryor Orser, the head coach of the Colorado School of Mines. Coach, you were an elite basketball player. I was reading through the bio. I mean, Montana has not put up a statue of you, but it's coming soon enough. When did you know that you wanted to be a head coach?
Well, I mean, I think when you commit to something early in your life, and ultimately, you're just playing all the time. You're practicing all the time. It's in your blood. I mean, when I went to college, I played Division II in Montana. I had an opportunity to walk on University of Montana. Chose the scholarship route, just for financial reasons mainly. And I think even though I graduated with degrees and things, and that's what most is basketball. And I had a degree in finance. I had 24 credits of accounting, and I have a minor in econ and a minor in history, but I knew basketball more than anything. And it was just, I always identified with coaches and I always identified with committed players. And I think it was just a natural progression for me to and I spent a year out of it with Northwestern Mutual. And it was just something that I could never get my mind off basketball. I could never stop X and O, and I could never stop drawing plays. I had to go back to it, and it was a void in my life, and I really wasn't happy without basketball.
Who did you look up to as you were a young coach, either locally or on a national scale?
Well, I think that's a term of mentors, and I think mentors come in stages. And obviously when you're a young player, you have different mentors, your coaches, your family, you have people who believe in you, that point you in that direction or help get you to that stage. And then all of a sudden you get to be a coach, and then you have your mentors who you work with, the people you work with. And my first mentor was Gary Bays at Eastern Montana College when I started. But then when I went to the NAI route, I had a guy named Gary Turcotte, who was a very successful NAI coach. He was an outstanding mentor, and I know there's a lot in my program that I think if he looked at my program, he'd say that looks a lot like Carroll College in Montana. And then I had another Hall of Fame coach, Ken Rocklitz, who was just an amazing junior college coach. And I spent 4 years at the JUCO level coaching women and assisting the men and teaching 15 credits. And so he was an outstanding mentor. And then, I slowly made it to Division I, and I worked with Don Holst. And then this job came up during my time there. And, I came from a family of leaders, and it was just automatic that I go be a head coach.
You talked about coaching women and then coaching men.
Yeah.
What were the biggest adjustments from one to the other?
You know what? I never really got it because I coach them both the same. I mean, we have fun. We obviously it's an accountability ownership style that I have. And I had a great experience coaching women, and obviously when I think the schemes are a little bit different, things like that. But in terms of it, I don't coach men and women differently. I coach them the same. And I know you hear people say, well, you coach them differently. I don't. It was one and the same. I'm the same person then that I am now. I mean, we had a lot of fun. They played their tails off just like my players now. So it was awesome. I had a great experience coaching women.
16 consecutive winning seasons, 7 straight 20-win seasons. How has your program been able to sustain that success year after year?
I think accountability and ownership, and I always relay, when someone asks me, those are the two terms that always come up. And for one, because I coach at a rigorous academic school, you have to get your players to take ownership in the program, because obviously they have a lot of different interests. I coach highly intellectual people and kids, and sometimes maybe basketball, if it doesn't have to be a priority because they're very talented and they can go do a lot of different things. So they have to have fun, and but the main thing is they have to have ownership in the program, and then that ultimately will help them be accountable. And and I think that's it. And obviously we're a developmental program as well. And we recruit freshmen, we redshirt, we develop, we over recruit. And we try to get sometimes too many guys, but we try to get as many guys as we can and develop them. And the cream always rises. And we have a great culture and a great foundation. And and obviously that gets to leadership. And I mean, the ownership, you have to allow your players some ownership in the leadership of the program. And the locker room has to be controlled by your great leaders in your program, and which it is. And for the last 15 years, that's always been the case. We've had great leaders in our program.
How do you balance that ownership and accountability? Is it something that does accountability come first, then ownership? Is it something that's on an equal level? Because I have a 6 and 4-year-old, and I'm ripping off this whole podcast, and I'm just going to teach this to them afterwards, because you're right. And I had 2 different coaches, Mike Jarvis and Bill Carmody. And Mike Jarvis at St. John's, he used to practice in the morning because he felt that was the best way to kind of keep the guys in at night, including myself, who enjoyed, let's just say, a few late nights here and there, right? And then I went to Northwestern, and Bill Carmody there kind of treated you like, I was never a pro, but it was like, here's what you're supposed to do. I'm not going to kind of supervise you going to class, doing these things. And it was so interesting to see kind of both ends of the spectrum. So we talk about ownership and accountability. Is one more important to freshmen or sophomores? One more important? How do you kind of manage all that?
Well, I think, see, ownership evolves. And then obviously when you have young players come into your program, you have to make them accountable. And I think that's where I'm more autocratic with the younger players. I'm like, this is what we do, and this is how we do it. This is our culture, and this is what you have to do. Over the time of the 4 or 5 years you're here, you're going to develop a very genuine ownership for our program. And that's through work ethic, relationships, interpersonal communication that we have with our coaches, and your love of the school, and your goal to get this degree in the end. And so I think it's one and the same. It's very important, but accountability early on in their career, and then the ownership takes place over time. And because obviously the ownership has to occur, because usually they're going to get more minutes when they're an older player. Just because we have a successful program, very rarely does a true freshman come in and play right out, even though that does happen. But for the most part, it doesn't. So, your ownership, your leaders of your team generally are your older players. But not to say we have a vertically integrated style of leadership here. And I want my players and I want my freshmen speaking up, and I want them to develop in their own minds. And that's one of our first meetings, is we tell our freshmen that we want you to start developing as a leader. And, you can talk, you can communicate, you can be competitive. And so we start that process early on.
When did that evolution take place, that players, even for yourself, right, they have a say? And growing up on Long Island, my next door neighbor, and if you've listened to the podcast before, this, was Bob McKillop. And Bob, now at Davidson, was my brother's high school coach.
Wow.
And he was looked at almost like, there was no talking to Bob McKillop. Like, Bob McKillop told you what to do. And now, crazy enough, right, you got 30 years later, I'm announcing Bob McKillop games. And he had kind of a Gene Hackman style where he came down, it was 4 passes and screens. Right. And then he goes to coaching Steph Curry, who's shooting 40-foot threes. It's like, when did this all happen? Obviously, you played in the 80s. You were a great player into the 90s. Like, when did this all happen that coaches started to say, I got to listen to my players a little more?
Well, I think that's the changing landscape, that we have here. And, just with the social things that we have going on. And I think that, obviously in the 70s and 80s, this, back to this mentor thing, all coaches have this, and people in general have what's called these silent mentors. Even though you don't have a relationship with them, you don't talk to them, you're listening to them, you're reading about them, you're watching them coach, whether it be Vince Lombardi or Bob Knight or some of these, my way or the highway type coaches. And so that was a style back then. And, obviously things have changed with social media and I think one of the things that coaches, including myself, is there are other ways to win, and you can win. You can win by doing things differently than maybe those coaches did. And, and I really believe that. And so I think that, I think that obviously the leadership style like when you referred to Coach McKillop, he was a younger coach then, and
Yep.
Younger coaches tend to be more insecure, and so they tend to be more autocratic. And then as time evolves and they evolve and they get more mature, they get more confidence in their abilities, and they win, and so they deem themselves as credible, as credible, and so they're a little bit more relaxed. And I mean, I know so many coaches like, I'm not going to have an earring on any of my players. I'm not. Well, all of a sudden, 10 years later, 12 years later, that's the last thing they could care about. They're not fighting that battle anymore, including me. I was that way too. I mean, that's the last thing I'm thinking about. And if players want to be themselves, and that's fine. And, they have a voice, as long as if they're playing hard, taking care of business, going to school, getting good grades, going to graduate, we'll have a great relationship.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing answer. I mean, that was really, because, interviewing him recently, I know this isn't the Bob McKillop podcast, but he even looks back on it and called himself a tyrant. And, his evolution, because that's actually what my brother remembers. He doesn't have, let's just say, the fondest memories of basketball. And I have different memories because I'm 12 years younger than he was. So my experiences were different, and it's interesting to see that evolution. And I thought you articulated it.
Yeah.
Damn, you're smart, coach. No wonder why you're winning so many games. But early on, it wasn't that easy. I was checking out your record, 5-21 your first year, then several seasons hovering around 500. What happened that took you from a good team to elite?
Well, so the first year, so I leave University of Montana in September. So I come and take over that 5-21 team on September. I think my first day at school was September. Well, 9/11. I drove down on 9/11.
Wow.
2001, the day the towers came down. And so, I get to school, and heck, I didn't know anybody, but, obviously we had a couple players on the team that I knew about. One I had coached, who was actually walking in the program when I was in junior college. He was a pre-engineering major. And then a younger brother of a player that was at the University of Montana. And that's how I really got involved with the program, because both of their parents called me and says, we want you to apply. We'd like you to be the head coach here. And, I considered engineering, and my brothers are engineers. And so, I come from an academic family. So, I think I think I can do this. And, but we didn't have any scholarships, hardly had any scholarships, and so when you see those records, there's a trajectory of the scholarship dollars as well with those records. And so, I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, you can't win without having talent,
right?
And talent costs money. Let's face, even at academic schools, and really good players who are committed to the game, they want good basketball and good academics. And there are a lot of other programs in the country that have that. And so we generally found that sometimes you get these really good players, it was hard for us to get involved in, even though they wanted engineering, they would choose to go other places.
20 years at Colorado School of Mines, and a lot of coaches would have maybe kicked the tires on another program, maybe making a jump to a bigger school. Do you just think this is a perfect fit for you?
Well, I think, and one is there's probably been some opportunities out there, but there really hasn't been, I would say, concrete opportunities where I could say that, this is going to be a better situation, because I'm in a situation right now. I mean, I love what I do. I love the guys I coach. I love the people I work with. I've got a great president. I have a great AD, my assistant. And I mean, we have a great situation. I love where I live too. And so it's a question of, do I want to take over a really bad program that coaches have lost forever? Or do I want to stay where there's stability? And there's a lot of coaches throughout, and I've watched a lot of them. They go from job to job to job, and they get to the end, they don't have any retirement. They don't have anything. So I'm always examining that. There's a lot of coaches, when they're done with it, they don't have a pension, or they don't have retirement. They still have to work. And I don't want to be one of those guys, because let's say I want to go Division I, and my ego doesn't go there. It just
Right.
doesn't. I want stability for my family. And so, but not to say that if there was an opportunity, you're always examining the situation.
Yeah, I mean, graduating from Northwestern, I was fortunate enough to, when I was in school, Pat Fitzgerald inherited the job as the head
Right.
football coach at Northwestern because Randy Walker passed away. And so
Right.
much with coaching is aligned with broadcasting. And that's why I feel for you coaches, because I know about the grind and I know that the luck that's involved, right? Whether it's putting in their winning season
Yes.
or coach moves on or getting the right job. And you have a player's parents calling you to apply for a job. And look how happy you are and all the success you have. Like, there is so much luck involved with the hard work. Like, you can put in all this hard work and there is no payoff. But getting back to Coach Fitzgerald, if this was an earlier time, he would have been gone. He would have taken the Packers job. He might have taken the Lions job. Instead, he's going to be at Northwestern. He was kind of echoing exactly what you said as far as his family and stability. And he could be, a legacy there. And I'm fortunate enough to be a Northwestern grad. So I'm like, this is awesome. Yeah, like we're going to have good football teams and we're going to be competitive because there's so many years of being down. So that's amazing for you to kind of understand. And I saw the Dan Munsons of the world. I'm sure if Dan could do that all over again, he probably would have been pretty happy in Spokane, right, Coach?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. That I agree with that. I mean, sometimes, you got to know where you're at. And if you have a really great situation, and a lot of times, I remember Stu Morrill told me, 20 years ago, one of the reasons we coach Division I or you want to move up is because of money. But, I think to a certain extent, is the risk worth the reward when you're taking some of these jobs? And that's what, like Fitzy. Fitzy just signed a 10-year extension. My AD worked with Fitzy. He was my boss was Gary Barnett's director of operations at Northwestern. So I know all about Fitzy in this. He's doing the right thing. He signed that extension. He's got a great job. He's got a great culture. And he has stability and he has value. He has value for his entire life. And that's huge for a coach.
He also has a lot of money now too, but that also helps.
His bank account's happy.
A couple more questions for you. As we record this, your team right now is unbeaten, number 1 in the nation. Does the pressure of an undefeated season start to set in as we kind of creep towards the end of the year?
Yeah, I think possibly, but what's weird about, because it's a COVID year, we're just trying to play the next game. That's what we're focusing on. We played 2 teams that had a couple positive guys and it's knocked us out. And so, we've had our last 4 games canceled. And so, we're just happy to play the next game. And we're really happy to play tonight because with COVID and all the stuff that's going on, it's been really, really, I would say there's a lot of anxiety that's gone on with this last year. And obviously we're just, with all the stuff that's going on and where our nation's at, we're really happy to play a game and play a sport. And we're trying not to even focus on that undefeated season or anything like that. Let's just go play ball. Let's go have some fun. Let's play our style, play our way, and obviously the regional just came out this morning. We're really happy about that, but we have to go play a game. Let's don't put pressure on ourselves. And we can do that because we've got guys, we can overanalyze things. I coach 17 engineers. So, so we try not to overanalyze, but we do anyways.
As this bullseye gets bigger and, do you start kind of thinking about, obviously you're a smart guy. Do you start kind of planning out, all right, if we get to this date, if we get to this situation, here's what I'm going to say. And like you said, even your players, you can't avoid a giant elephant in the room when you're having this kind of success, right? And egos could get big. And is there a part of you that's like, I wouldn't mind maybe a slip up and maybe a learning lesson? We had one of the coaches on, Eric Conkle from Louisiana Tech, and he said such a poignant thing that stood out to me. He goes, you really get to see a team's character when they lose. Now, obviously, you've lost, and you lost a lot throughout your career, especially your first year.
Yeah,
but this is going to be a unique spot for you.
Yeah, Obviously I've been coaching a long time. So, I mean, my attitude is I want to win every game. I go on to win every game, and then we'll make an adjustment. And obviously we're at a situation where, we always say that if we lose a game, we didn't play well, or we didn't perform well, or we had individuals that didn't perform well, so there's always something to build upon, whether it's a win or loss for us. And I mean, oftentimes when you're winning, we're like, okay, so we played well in this first 5 minutes. We played well. We actually lost the game in the next 5 minutes because we turned it over 6 out of 10 possessions. So this is what we can do to improve that. We won the game, but we lost this 5 minutes. So, I mean, that's kind of how we do it. And we want to just try to win. I mean, we want to try to win the game, and we play one game at a time. If you get to this time of year, you play one more game. You play one game, you get another one, and that's coming up real soon. So let's just play one game and we'll worry about it. So this weekend, our travel partner had COVID issues.
Yep.
So we have to play tonight. We got to drive through a winter storm in Colorado. Hopefully we'll get there by game time tomorrow in Gunnison. And we're driving minivans. We decided not to take the bus because we didn't want to sit in a tube, with COVID or whatever. So, I mean, and then this team is resting for us. And he's my former assistant. And I know he's going to have his team ready to go. So we're going to see some adversity. But I want that. I want that challenge, because later on down the road, it's going to pay off for us if we come through this weekend.
Last question for you. Do you ever say to all the outstanding student athletes that you have, stop thinking and just go out there and play?
Yeah, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So, I mean, I think the biggest frustration when you're coaching, highly intellectual guys is, there's no correlation between high IQ basketball and a high ACT score. I mean, I say that. I mean, people always say, "Oh, man, your kids must be great. They can remember." No, I've got kids in my program that they can remember. They can't remember set plays or out of bounds plays, and they might be a 36 ACT. And it's just how it is. It's just I think it's where the priority is in their brain. So, but then we have some outstanding, very, very smart guys too that really have the high basketball IQs as well. So.
Amazing. Well, we appreciate you joining the podcast. Good luck the rest of the year. It was a lot of fun to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you. Anytime.
And thanks for tuning in to the NABC Guardians of the Game podcast. We'll be back next time with another electrifying guest. Coach, good luck the rest of the year. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you.